After over 50 hours, I finally 100% in Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. I got all the achievements, completed every piece of side content, and explored the entire map. So let's discuss if Ubisoft's latest game falls into the same pits as their other games, or does it succeed in breaking the Ubisoft formula. As always, this review will contain spoilers, and if you like this content, consider liking, subbing, joining the channel, follow me on Twitch, or donate to my Patreon. The narrative begins before the first Avatar film. A bunch of Na'vi children are being taught by the RDA, or Research Development Administration, to become embassies between the humans and Na'vi, called the Ambassador Program, or TAP for short. Taken from their home, the Na'vi demonstrate resistance towards the humans, and your sister is unfortunately killed. After the events of the first film transpire, the leader of TAP, John Mercer, tries to wipe out the program, including the Na'vi, but you and your allies are saved by the lead scientist Alma, who's also wearing an avatar, and placed into cryosleep to survive the events led by Jake Sully. Eventually, everyone is saved by Alma thanks to another Na'vi called Solak, and now you must help unite the tribes against what remains of the RDA, all while trying to reconnect with your native roots. Mercer, as a villain, is extremely bare bones. He's the embodiment of every negative quality involving a businessman, such as greed, violence, anger, and pride, whereas the Na'vi is often conveyed as benevolent and righteous by all accounts. Your Na'vi allies don't get a lot of screen time, but have their own journeys of self-reflections, such as dealing with vengeance, loyalty, and understanding. The issue is that the game attempts to do everything from giving each of the three tribes you'll try to unite enough time to convey their various ideals. No one gets enough time to flesh out, and often they'll get forgotten until the story requires them. As for the protagonist, you're just another Na'vi. You don't have a character arc and fit right into your role with ease as being an embassy between the resistance and the Na'vi tribes trying to unite. You're basically a jack of all trades who can accomplish anything and can convince anyone of anything. Your character's personality is so unimportant that you can alter them mid-game, including their gender and voice, with no issue at any time following this new element that's introduced. The game also has this strange inclusion of choices in some missions that don't do anything, almost like there was a morality system that was considered but removed, but they kept it in the game for some reason, not really sure why. As for the supporting cast, they had a lot of potential being more than just background characters. Talon, for example, is having a very difficult time adjusting to freedom. He craves the security of being told what to do, prefers working with machines, and even still wears his TAP clothing despite being out of the organization. He's conditioned to think this way, but it shows the potential what could have been. A Na'vi struggling between nature and nurture, but someone who hates violence. His brother and sisters go through the same issues, but one note matters. Nor is consumed by revenge against the humans, and his sister just wants to be a Na'vi and feel like one of her people again. Sorlek is perhaps the most interesting character, yet left out in the cold. Like you, he lost his clan to the humans, but still fights alongside the resistance. He has issues with humans, but treats everyone on an individual level. Understand that not all humans are the same. He acts like your mentor, but like the rest of the cast is only called on when needed. That being said, the narrative does fall flat, and it's a shame because it had incredible potential. I get that this is an established IP, and Ubisoft doesn't have the same level of creative control as opposed to their other games. Perhaps they could have explained a different side of the Na'vi, showcasing they aren't just pure creatures, such as refusing to accept you since you were raised by humans, and spending the game attempting to recapture that Na'vi sense of identity, but being attached to the human ways because they raised you. Even go further and say the humans didn't treat you like garbage, but instead loved and cared for you and your siblings, creating a gray area where the lines between humans and Na'vi are blurred, similar to how the avatars operate. Despite being aliens, both species can fall victim to the same vices and sin, and expand on that. Instead of much of the humans on your side simply want to be Na'vi, and those who are not on the Na'vi side being evil. This is especially explored in a very interesting way by Alma. She's your teacher, the lead scientist of TAP, and the reason you survived. She desperately wants to be Na'vi, even seeing her human body as the stranger instead of the avatar that she uses to converse with the Na'vi outside on Pandora. There's a very cool arc where you bury Alma's body after it's killed by Noor, your brother who is consumed by vengeance and wants all humans to suffer. After her avatar's death, everyone turned on Alma after learning her dark secrets against the Na'vi, even burying her avatar self like it was her. But this is barely explored and forgotten right after, with the NPCs offering background commentary on it. There's also extensive dialogue between the characters and even audio and text diary entries showcasing that a lot of people really have turned on Alma after her Na'vi self died, and a lot of people look at her human body as the stranger and they're just utterly angered by this. Even Alma herself doesn't know who she is without her avatar, so this could have been something very interesting. Maybe they're saving this for a future DLC, but either way, Alma is kind of pushed to the side after this entire event, and it's a bit confusing. Another thing that was not explored is how the Resistance plans to continue living on Pandora. The RDA are the only ones who have an option to return to Earth, and since most things on Pandora are either toxic to humans, including the very atmosphere they live on, or the animals they simply cannot connect in the same way that the Na'vi connect with the ecosystem on this planet, they're basically living on one giant coffin with borrowed time. Another thing is that despite the RDA literally ripping the Earth from Pandora, Iwa, which is the planetary god of Pandora, does nothing despite the first film showcasing that this god can literally control all the creatures on the planet. So why doesn't this god simply take control of the creatures, seeing that the RDA is doing the same level of destruction as they did within the first film? Another thing is that you spend a lot of time just trying to convince the clans to join the Resistance to fight against the RDA. Yet Jake Sully was able to unite the clans to fight against the RDA easily despite being an outsider. Granted, he did have the aerial predator Taruk on his side, which served as a great convincing factor, but regardless, it just seems a little strange that an outsider was able to just convince them very easily. And considering that this takes place after the first film, wouldn't the entire Na'vi race on Pandora be against the RDA, knowing what they're capable of and what they're doing to Pandora? So I'm just a little confused of why this is all happening despite everything that transpired in the first film. As I stated, the story had a lot of potential to create a lot of gray areas for a better, more dynamic experience, and it's clear the writers did want to attempt something with this, as seen with characters like Alma, Talon, and Noir. Alma having to accept that she will never be Na'vi no matter how much she wears their skin. Talon is forced with the harsh reality of freedom and the consequences of his choices while learning to live for himself, and Noir's anger towards human consuming him. Overall, the narrative has some positive elements, but it really drags on when you complement it with the vast amount of optional missions that involve a lot of tedious busy work. So while you're trying to unite everyone against the RDA, you're at the same time committing yourself to a lot of tedious objectives that really don't pair well with the overall narrative. Avatar is a first-person shooter with heavy harvesting elements. Taking reference from Far Cry, players will have a massive world to explore separated into 3 regions. Each of the regions unlocks as you complete the mainline story, which takes around 15 hours and depends whether you play on the hardest difficulty or on explorer or guided modes. The start of Avatar is pretty bad. You'll have few ways to explore the world, barely anything to fight with, and you'll die as you try to grasp the game's mechanics. Avatar is definitely one of those games that gets easier the more you play, but you definitely have to take it on its terms. You'll start with a bow and eventually earn a heavy bow, slinger for traps and explosives, shotgun, assault rifle, and a short bow for the complete set of weapons you'll get. I do like they allowed you to use human weapons, and if they included my proposed narrative of blurring the line between humans and Na'vi, couldn't included 2 skill trees based on human and Na'vi weapons, but all the skills are completely linked to Na'vi weapons. Yes, you do get some baseline skills that allow you to increase your damage, but for the most part, the human weapons are very limited. You'll need to craft ammo for your bow and slinger, but ammo for human weapons are found on destroyed mechs and human stashes. I rarely ran into a situation where I didn't have the resources to craft arrows, since they just use sticks, or gathering ammo is basically everywhere, so ammo was never really a problem for me. The skill tree is separated into 5 categories and 1 ancestral tree, which offers baseline skills. The core categories include a variety of skills from health and energy upgrades, gathering more resources, aerial combat, and increased damage. The leveling system is based on completing quests and gathering gear. Once you've collected all the skills in the tree, you're given an Apex mission to gain the final skill. These missions involve doing something that complements the tree, such as crafting a powerful item in the maker skills, or perfectly killing 2 creatures in the hunter tree. The better your gear, the more your combat strength, which is your level, increases. The game includes 3 types of gear rarity, such as fine, superior, and exquisite. Exquisite gear is the highest rarity, but you can craft or find better exquisite gear as the game progresses. This leveling system was clearly implemented to prevent players from steamrolling through the content. Much of the game deals with busy work such as harvesting resources and hunting. I spent more time gathering items than actually doing mainline content or fighting. Even after completing 95% of all the content before the final mission, I only reached level 19. You can further upgrade your gear using mods earned throughout the game. Cosmetics are also available, but these are limited, which is a shame. Armor cosmetics are plentiful, and you can transmog almost any gear that you've collected. This includes weapons as well, but the skins and charms for weapons are limited. So what about the missions? There are 3 types: quest, explorations, and clan contributions. Quests are traditional objectives given by NPCs and mainline content. Explorations are repetitive busy work, and clan contributions require you to gather items to donate to various Na'vi settlements. Explorations and clan contributions are where you'll spend most of your time, especially if you plan to 100% the game. The exploration quests include a variety of repetitive tasks such as clearing RDA bases, reactivating data points for the resistance, resetting flutes, powering up research bases, collecting comic book pages, performing ritual yoga at specific instances, and finding your clan's totems. Thankfully, you can locate these by exploring the map, and the game highlights when you are at these key places within range with a purple dial on your screen. This also includes key flora that increases your health and provides a skill point or an ancestral skill, but those are for very specific plants, and you'll see the difference because they're much larger. Also, they're highlighted on the map with a different icon, but you won't know what it is until you scan the item. As for clan contributions, these are obtained by heading into a settlement and interacting with the area's community donation crate. Once done, you're tasked with getting a specific item, such as fruit, meat, gear, or a cooked item. The clan contributions have 3 parts to them with rewards provided for each tier. Reaching the final tier grants you access to the best items from the vendors in the main settlement in each region. In addition, donations are the best way to obtain the Na'vi's useful currency, clan favor. It's not really currency, but it's what you use in order to buy supplies. Avatar has 3 types of currency: clan favor for Na'vi, scrap for resistance, and RDA roster information for select. Now, you can get as much scrap as you want and roster information to an extent, but the clan favor is capped at a certain amount, and you can use it to get items from the artisans in each main settlement, but the rarity of the item determines how much clan favor is required. Sometimes they'll provide you with a free gift as well, but this is the best and easiest way to obtain rare resources within the area. Scrap is earned from RDA camps, and you can earn a skill to get them from destroyed mechs. RDA roster information is found in the same areas, but it's far more limited. Speaking of resources, get ready to harvest a lot of things. Despite Avatar's focus on nature, you're going to have to harvest like a human, which means everything. Like gear, the resources are separated into the same 3 categories. Thankfully, you can earn skills to better see which offers the best quality, and you can pick multiple of the same resources by investing into these same skills. Resources are separated based on regions, and there is a helpful dossier that tells you where to locate the best items, but they're usually separated into a very specific area. You can't just go into an area and find the best quality items automatically. Collecting flora requires a tedious pick-and minigame every time. You need to find the sweet spot before it can be picked. This requires you to rotate the specific item in order to find the sweet spot, meaning that there's a certain crackle or indicator. Usually you get a dial, but over the course of the game they remove it, so you just have to circle it until you find the right area. If you just try and pull it at every direction, the item won't maintain its pristine nature, and you'll get a less quality item. In addition, some ingredients require exact time of day or weather conditions to even be picked, not to mention to get the best quality. quality as well. Ubisoft thankfully knew this would become tedious and annoying and offers options to reduce these obtuse requirements, like simplified options for picking. You can choose an option that defaults all the picking of a specific resource to a certain angle or automatically pick the item. If you choose the auto option, you can't get the exquisite resources, so you either have to choose the less tedious option or the more tedious option. Either way, just get prepared for a lot of picking like this. I spent more time locating and picking resources than anything else, even traveling in this game. The hunting for Avatar is very fleshed out, and I enjoyed that the most. You'll track an array of creatures that each have weak points, unique animations, and habits. The only exception is the Thanator, which cannot be hunted in a traditional way. You can't go into a particular area and locate the creature. Instead, you have to randomly encounter it when it's within proximity of you. Eventually, it will start to track you, preventing you from accessing your Navi focus. Eventually, a white hue appears on screen, and it gets filled as the mutated tiger starts to increase its distance between where you are, and then it will charge your position. Even your flying mount won't appear once it starts to give chase, and more likely you'll be one-shotted unless you're at least level 20, and even then it's a formidable foe. As for the rest of the fauna, each can be tracked using scent markers and comes in 3 variants: young, regular, and mature. And like with the resources, there is a skill to allow you to easily track the mature animals. Each creature has a weak point, including the Thanator, and if struck with a heavy blow at the exact point at full draw, it will kill the creature instantly. Now this may sound easy, but it's incredibly difficult and requires patience and skills. You can't just pull this off. You cannot get resources from an animal when they're killed by guns, and depending if the kill was clean and merciful, meaning you killed it quickly, will determine your resource haul. I don't think anything happens if you kill a bunch of creatures quickly, despite I was doing it, and the game does call for mass collecting of resources, so it kind of goes against the whole idea of Avatar and the Navi being close to nature when you go on mass massacres just for the parts of these animals. I mean, they do say thank you for these gifts, but I just killed 3 of these creatures because I needed some meat. The only example that is an exception to this rule is the fish, which provide you with the same resource of meat, but you still need a bow and arrow to kill them cleanly. If you use a gun, again, the meat will be ruined. This resource gathering system does get annoying during the late game. You have a storage unit and it's only located in the main settlement, but this will quickly get filled. I didn't know they had a limit, but they do. Since items do not stack, expect to have more than you can hold, forcing you to either donate or use them. I get this was implemented to keep you from hoarding, but when the game calls for such heavy resources for a majority of the quest, it contradicts the system that has limits, especially considering that you need a lot of exquisite material and then you have to waste it because you don't have enough room. The game does have an effective tracking system that highlights resources that you pin with a golden hue when within range, so it makes it a lot easier to go back to those regions and collect them, and also you can place markers on the map similar to Elden Ring, so you can know exactly where these resources are in case you forget. You can pin 3 items at a time, and it really does help out during the extensive gathering quest. The resources can be used to craft gear and cooking. The gear crafting usually gives you a lot of options of what you can use for crafting materials, but only the high-end equipment requiring exact items. You'll need to engage with this once you get the final maker skill, which boosts all crafted items. As for cooking, the same principle applies. Better ingredients means better boost. Cooking plays a pretty large role in Avatar. The first ingredient serves as the benefit of temporary skills such as increased damage, better stats, health bonuses, and so on, whereas the second item determines how long you'll last. You'll have to constantly eat since you'll have an energy meter. This meter serves as your regeneration, and once depleted, you cannot regenerate health. You can instantly heal using a fruit that works just like a health pack, but you can only carry 2 at the beginning and 4 once you upgraded the skill tree. The world itself is massive, and I really mean massive. Ubisoft is notorious for crafting incredible worlds, and Pandora is no different. The presentation here is exceptional, right down to the mannerisms of all the flora and fauna. They even included entire dossiers for every creature and plant life, even the ones that you cannot interact with. Small details like bamboo being crushed, leaves falling from trees, and creatures interacting after noticing your presence all create a sense of realism, but that also works at the game's disadvantage. Be prepared for a lot of traveling, and when on foot the game is a drag due to how much space is within this game, and since there is no dynamic quest, you won't find anything along the way. It's clear the game was meant for flying, and thankfully you get an Ikron about 1/6 of the way throughout the game, even giving you access to flight before a horse because they know you will need this. The world of Pandora is beautiful, but it's its own worst enemy. On film, the world is a glory to look at, but when you're exploring in a video game, it falls victim to sensory overload and poor visual navigation. The amount of flora can make seeing what's in front of you difficult, and during night the neon plants lead to even more problems when trying to explore because everything's just so bright and colorful. Again, it looks beautiful to look at, but when you're actually traveling throughout the world and need to locate specific plants, such as these plants that drop vines, it's a little difficult to do so. Coupled with the plant-like ranging from explosive, spewing toxic gas, and even electrical charge that make it hard to move once you're shocked, just makes the entire experience vexing as you try to navigate this world. I get there's a lot of hostile life here, but eventually it does become a repetitive nuisance. You'll eventually gain enough experience and health to ignore these, but in the opening parts of the game, just expect a lot of annoyances like this. Despite the fast travel points being plentiful, I still found myself constantly having to call my Ikron to fly to another location for resource harvesting or just to get to my location. This wouldn't be a major issue if my mount didn't keep getting caught in the trees or simply refusing to land. Flying is fine and your Ikron will keep moving forward unless you tell it to stop, but it still felt very slow. It also has an energy meter, but you can feed it whatever to replenish this, with its favorite food being marked without an X, adding more energy to the meter. You can access a skill that allows you to automatically eat fish from streams, which is pretty cool and easy to do, but I kind of wish that they had a system like Horizon Forbidden West where your mount would just pick you up automatically. There's very little reason for the creature to be on the ground, seeing it doesn't aid you in combat. You do get aerial combat skills, and it's pretty simple. You take out your weapon and you fire on the enemy when controlling your mount. Eventually you gain a skill that allows your Ikron to take down RDA helicopters, and when you land you can create a gust of wind that disorients enemies. But I found this useless since my weapons did so much damage, and my Ikron would get easily shot and noticed by enemies before they can even engage with these skills. There's also an optional objective where you can take down RDA satellite surveillance that are in the air to obtain extra scrap, but these are purely optional, and I found destroying mechs and just going into RDA bases to be a lot more efficient. To take down these surveillance systems, you have to climb on top of them, hack them using your tool, which you can auto-complete. The hacking tool, you just go to it, and then honestly, the entire minigame surrounding it, putting the circles together and navigating the electrical circuits, was fun for a few times, but eventually it becomes so tedious that I decided just to put it on autocomplete because I want to avoid all this nonsense that I could just simply bypass. But yeah, once you do that, you jump off the satellite system and it explodes and you get scrap. I've been talking a lot without getting into the actual combat because it's not really the main focus of Avatar for most of the game. It's about harvesting a lot of the times. Combat works in much of the same sense of any first-person shooter. You shoot and kill targets. The primary enemy is the RDA, which includes soldiers that come with assault rifles or snipers, but they die very easily, sometimes from one punch or a few shots from your gun. The mech suits come in a variety of options and will serve as the biggest threat from the RDA. This includes baseline models with little armor to heavily armored targets that can't be destroyed with frontal assaults and need you to attack their weak points. Their weapons include assault rifles, heavy rifles, flamethrowers, and mortars. Each one has a battery pack except for one type that I can't really say what it is for spoiler reasons that can instantly destroy them, but they'll often protect these batteries and they require exact shots in order to take them down. You miss by even a few centimeters and it won't affect or destroy the entire thing. On top of it, it also explodes, causing everyone to be aware of the situation and can hurt you. And you can only use arrows for this, so don't think you can just spray your assault rifle and shoot the battery hoping it will be destroyed. You're going to fight a ton of these mech suits because, like I stated, the standard enemies will literally die from one punch, but you're also a glass cannon. Your character cannot take a lot of damage in the early game. Stealth is usually encouraged, but it's very flimsy here, which is shocking considering Ubisoft's experience. Once you alert one enemy, you have about 2 seconds before the entire area knows where you are. It is possible to take the stealth approach, but without the upgrades to reduce noise, it's an annoyance and nearly impossible unless you are exceptionally good and know exactly where the enemies are. You can tag enemies beforehand, but again, the tagging system is flimsy as well. You have to put the icon right on top of the enemy, and sometimes, based on my experience, the tag will actually disappear if you get too far. Given your size, you also feel a little exposed. I mean, you are a giant blue cat creature, and you cannot one-shot mechs with melee range. You can shoot their batteries, but as I stated earlier, that explosion does alert enemies. If you do complete an RDA base without them calling for reinforcements or being alerted of your position, you're given extra bonuses, but I usually found the headache of stealth is just not worth it. You can regain your stealth status, but the enemies still remain on high alert. The game's AI is actually formidable to a degree. They'll push your position using force, throw grenades when at range, flank your position to keep the pressure up, and when you complete an objective during an RDA base, they'll take notice, getting alerted, and even actively guarding the other objectives without fully knowing where your location is. But during larger bases, they don't leave these areas that they're supposed to defend, so you can use that to your advantage. Just stay outside that area of influence and just take them out from afar. This goes the same for alerted, where they take a little while to alert the entire base despite saying that the entire base is on alert. The game does highlight enemy combat strengths to give you an understanding of what enemies are out of your league, usually giving them a glowing red hue, stating this enemy is way too powerful, but you can still take them on if you're feeling risky. Due to the way damage is accumulated, you can still take on these objectives, but like I said, you'll probably be shredded into mincemeat. One of the bigger headaches in Avatar is definitely the navigation. As I stated, the world is huge and there's often a lot of sensory overload, especially when you're walking around the environment. The map itself is covered in a fog that you must clear by heading to that area and just moving around, which is particularly tedious. I kind of wish they had something like Assassin's Creed where if you get to a settlement, you can choose to map out the entire area. It can become incredibly frustrating when there are key locations that you have to discover, but you don't know that's there because you didn't get that one particular piece of fog removed because you didn't go to that specific location. The game separates all the regions into categories and biomes, which does make locating resources easier, but there's no index to quickly find certain areas, so you'll just have to memorize them all, especially when it comes to smaller areas, but there are also YouTube tutorials in case you get lost. The navigation does get worse using the Navi focus. This ability is a lifesaver, but it's also a curse as it highlights areas of interest and resources, but can be muddled. For example, if a resource is on a tree or inside a plant, you have exactly half a second to scan it to see if the rarity of the item is what you need, or the vision will default to the larger plant. Now, this is something that I really found annoying, is that when you need to talk to a particular NPC, sometimes they'll give you a waypoint of where the NPC is, and sometimes they won't. I don't understand why this exists. If I'm in an established settlement and I need to talk to someone specific, just tell me where they are. I don't need to say, hey, they're in the cheese tent. I don't know what that is. I don't have these locations memorized. Just tell me where they are. I don't want to have to explore the entire area for an additional 2 minutes just to locate this person. Just tell me where they are. Ubisoft does include 2 options to explore the world, with option A giving you just the information of the location and forcing you to find it based on the clues provided, or a basic option where the location is just highlighted and you can find it using your Navi vision. I tried both, and I can say if you choose the Explorer option, which is option A, be prepared to add about 20 hours to your game time, because trust me, unless you are a true environmentalist, you're going to get lost very easily. But the worst thing in this game, and I mean the worst, is the investigations. I don't know who will find this fun. There are bare bones detective work where you have to link 2 things together to gather clues and then follow a scent trail. And it's just very, very boring, tedious, and annoying. You don't know how big the area of the investigation is, where the clues are in terms of how far they are between this distance, and since the area is borderless, you can generally walk out of the area without even knowing. It's just generally a worse version of the Batman Arkham series detective system. All of this could have been solved by just putting a waypoint to the key locations and telling you this is what you need to interact with. That, or just copy the Arkham detective system, because I don't know who thought of this. It seems like a rush job. It just sucks. There's no way to put this to have benefit quality within the game. It could have been infinitely better if they just cut this out and just put key point locations that you just interact with on a surface level. What is truly confusing is why Ubisoft didn't include a buddy system seen in Far Cry. Avatar was built for this system. It's all about unity, camaraderie, and harmony with nature, which would have been perfect to recruit Navi and animals to fight alongside you in this venture. It would have solved the issue of not giving the other characters enough screen time by allowing them to fight with you and giving them special abilities such as, I don't know, the ability to pick you up when you're down, healing benefits, sharpshooter, being a tank or a distraction. Heck, your Ikron could have been a distraction. There's a buddy right there who's with you all the time. It just doesn't make sense. This entire game is about you building relationships with people. Why wouldn't you include a buddy system? There is a cooperative option, but I didn't use it because I don't have anyone to play with. But seeing Ubisoft go the extra mile to include this feature is amazing. Hell, not even the billion-dollar corporation Activision Blizzard bothers with this anymore for modern Call of Duty games. And the fact that Ubisoft still puts this into their game, I applaud them for that. Thank you for doing this. It's actually a really nice gesture. I will say that the game does get better the more you progress, but the sheer amount of quality of life skills and the large area to explore and the ease of navigation, all of that's going to come with a serious time investment. In fact, I didn't get all these systems that started to meld together until around 4 hours into the game, and I'm being generous there. The entire first region of the game is going to take out a bulk of your time, and it's a very large time commitment. So just be prepared that the game does get a lot easier to deal with as you progress, but you're going to have to go through a very steep climb, like rock bottom steep, in order to get to that position where you're comfortable exploring the entire region without everything trying to kill you. The areas you explore also become much more engaging with the new level variety, but the time invested to get to that stage, like I stated, is very large. Now, there is an in-game store which has become common within Ubisoft games, but they've listened to feedback, and here it's a lot more tame than other games like Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Far Cry New Dawn. The most alluring things are cosmetic, since the core game has so few, and the gear that you get from the store will definitely give you a boost within the beginning part of the game, but once you reach out, say, a third in, all of it becomes useless, because most of the gear that you get within the game, at least the ones that I got because I invested heavily in the side content before I reached the second area, will give you the more beneficial stat enhancements, and you'll likely throw all of this away. So there is a store there, but they're a lot more tame than other past entries, and it's clear that they're listening to feedback regarding this. Now, I can't play the music in its raw form due to YouTube systems, but I gotta say, the musical score was pretty amazing. Now, I don't know if they took it directly from the films. I did, of course, hear some soundtracks that came from the films, but a lot of the music here just pairs so well with so many of the situations, from combat to general encounters. I genuinely did not expect the music to be this amazing. The same goes for the voice acting and general sound design. The actors really went above and beyond with their performances, and I applaud all of them for giving it their all. Like with the presentation, the overall experience for the voice acting, the sound design, everything is just high quality. It's just a lot of the stuff that you're doing in this amazing world is just so samey and so Ubisoft. They really have to modernize this, because it's pulling me from both sides. On one hand, you have this exceptional presentation. On the other hand, I'm doing the same thing that I've been doing in Far Cry, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It's like I've been doing this all the time. You guys kind of need to focus on more, dynamic and engaging content that goes and matches with the incredible presentation that you are giving to the player here. Avatar Frontiers of Pandora follows many of the same aspects that make Ubisoft games both good and bad. The repetitive mission structure offers very little incentive outside of a completionist mentality. Pandora is extremely detailed and wonderfully recreated with a textbook amount of lore for players who truly want to learn everything about this area, but navigating can be a chore due to the sheer amount of space and visual obstructions. Much of the narrative falls short due to the generic evil humans are bad, please stop them, and barely creates interest within the Na'vi culture since the drama between them usually stems from human involvement. I wish they went a bit further on the gray areas between humanity and Na'vi, where inner conflicts within each lead to self-discovery and cultural diffusion. What is clear is that the development team did care about what they were making here. The game had a passionate team behind it, and it really shows, and they took what they were making very seriously. They wanted to make an Avatar game that was faithful to the source material, and they succeeded on a lot of fronts. Even the voice actors gave it their all when providing their performances. The issue is that it falls into the same holes that Ubisoft is notorious for, and they need to start modernizing beyond the same gameplay loops. Put more focus on individual quests that have more meaning behind them, and if you do have gameplay loops and repetitive quests, make them a lot more meaningful. Take Red Dead Redemption 2, where the repetitive quest offers some sort of interesting mystery that has a big payout at the end, usually not in the way of some sort of upgrade, but in solving the mystery, or offer one-time benefits that are largely beneficial to the player, similar to Elden Ring, where repetitive content is constantly rewarded with new items for each time you complete it. Regardless, this is something that Ubisoft games have been plagued with, and Avatar is no different. However, Avatar Frontiers of Pandora is definitely a game made for fans of the franchise, and if you ever want to visit Pandora, this is definitely a game you want to play. It is a wonderful, meaty game that has a lot of content, but be prepared for a very large grind and a lot of repetitive harvesting. If you're willing to endure that, you'll find something very beautiful here.